Hello, amazing, divine, powerful, incredible human. Thank you so much for being here and joining me for this transmission. So, I'm excited to share today a little bit about empowerment, the ways that we are disempowered, and the ways that we can take back our power. And this is very much focused on the self. So, the first thing I think to kind of examine here is how we relate to power. So a lot of the time, I have in the past been reluctant to use the term power in my transmissions because it can often be a triggering concept for people. We often have grown up to associate power with control or suppression. And so I want to make it clear that the power that I talk about is this sense of um, divine embodiment. It's the power to just be you without needing to force anything on anyone else and without allowing anyone else's truth to be forced upon us. So this is the idea of it. So power is not about control. And if you look beneath the surface, the people who most desperately need to be in control are usually those that have the lowest sense of personal power. So we seek to control what's outside of us when we have no control about in what's going on within us. So this is where also emotional mastery is a really big contributing factor to our capacity for empowerment, because when we are able to master our own internal environment, then that kind of is how our reality is reflected into the world around us. So to get started, one of the first, so there are three main points which I'm going to make today in how we, in how we often aren't empowered and what we can do to empower ourselves. And the first one of those is empowerment is the freedom to make choices that nourish our heart, that feel expansive, and that feel aligned with our soul and with our being, with our hopes and our dreams. So oftentimes what we find is that when we're faced with making choices, and we always have choices in life, it's just a question of, and this is kind of speaks to that, is that often the choices that we see before us, one of them may feel very unsafe or triggering to our nervous system. Maybe we're not willing to make a choice because we're triggered into people pleasing. We don't want to upset people. Or our nervous system, we have patternings around not being able to have what we want. And this is quite a deep conversation, so I won't go all the way into that. But that's just a really great awareness to have. So every time you're faced with choices, I invite you to tune in, because so instead of going with the one that might make everyone happy, or the one that you should do, I invite you to tune in to your inner being and sit with what your heart wants. And if there is a fear around that, or if there's a discomfort within the nervous system around that, sit with that and allow yourself to explore it, instead of simply kind of pushing it to the side and making and doing the done thing, doing what keeps everyone happy, or whatever it is that will soothe the nervous system. Yeah. So we don't necessarily need to trigger ourselves into we don't need to trigger ourselves into anxiety and breakdown, but by having this inquiry and this awareness around how we feel when we're faced with choices, very empowering, because our choices empower us, and the way we feel safe to make the choices that we choose to make or desire to make is kind of setting the scene for how our life is going to unfold. Our choices determine our reality. So this is, if I only spoke on one point, this would be it. That your choice to empower yourself to make choices that expand and grow you into alignment with your soul. It's incredibly liberating. So that's the first point. The next is nervous system regulation. So it's a little bit related, but the greatest way to empower yourself to live the life that you wish to live is to learn how to regulate your nervous system. And that means that when you feel emotionally triggered, or when you fall into anxiety because maybe there's a really confronting situation or something that you're not comfortable with, maybe something you haven't dealt with before, maybe it's just a shift out of your comfort zone. But to be able to, instead of running away from that experience, to instead sit with it and connect with the body, soothe the nervous system. And there are a number of techniques which I do talk about, which can help empower us in, instead of running away from the nervous system activation, which is where we go into fight or flight. So instead of being in reaction mode to that, we can actually develop the resilience to pause. And first of all, we have to soothe ourselves. So we have to bring down the heart rate, bring down the stress chemicals. And, you can just do that with physical touch, often just, just bringing yourself back to presence, a few deep breaths, hand over the belly, hand over the heart. But to pause with this space and to choose to go ahead anyway, or to choose to, choose from an empowered perspective how you want to proceed. So, this nervous system regulation can keep us on course for the life or the reality or the experience that we're seeking to manifest, instead of scaring us out of it. And this is so relevant for so many layers of our experience. It's relevant for, whether or not we choose to go into a social situation which may have been triggering in the past, but it's also relevant for when we hit new points or new thresholds in how we're succeeding in life. These things which are so deeply ingrained in our limiting belief habits or limiting belief patterns, we often don't even notice they're there. But it's in observing our reaction and our response and this activation of this nervous system that we can start to unravel and start to empower ourselves in the way these manifest into our lives. So that's why I said at the beginning, you're a divine, amazing, powerful being. And when we learn these tools and techniques, we're truly able to take back conscious choice in the unfoldment of our lives. So the third aspect that I just want to highlight, and I see this especially in women, is that if we can stop apologizing for ourselves. So when you stop making yourself small and allowing yourself to take up space. I did a Vipassana retreat, which is a 10-day silence, rigorous meditation. It's pretty full on, but it's a great spiritual experience. And so you're in complete silence for these 10 days. And I found it really curious that I noticed the few times that I heard women accidentally speak or, slip something out, they were apologizing. And so this tendency that we feel this urge, this need that we need to say sorry when there's really nothing to apologize for. And the way we speak to ourselves is everything. It's part of our programming. And so when we continue to keep ourselves small, it perpetuates that small programming. So when we want to step into our power and our, when I say power, it's not the control, it's the capacity to be ourselves, to be fully self-expressed, to be seen in the world, to bring your beautiful, divine, unique light into the world. So when we can stop apologizing and catch ourselves, it's a process of again, just that observation and awareness. And it doesn't mean that we demean or belittle ourselves for anything. It's simply going, oh, wow, that's interesting. I didn't need to apologize then. And by registering that consciously, we start to retrain our habits. We start to retrain ourselves so that we reserve apologies for when they're actually warranted. instead of apologizing because you spoke, or apologizing because, I don't know, some kind of, small apologizing for taking up space, I think is probably the best way of putting it. So much of our power is lost in our dysregulated nervous system, in our fear to be seen and heard, in our need to, people please and comply and not stand out. And so with these 3 points, and this is, just scratching the surface, but it's also a really significant scratch in the surface. So, giving yourself permission to do you, and that's how we start to, bit by bit, re-empower ourselves to create the experience that we want, instead of the experience that our limiting beliefs thinks that we're worthy of, as an example. So, my darling humans, I love you so much. Thank you so much for being here for this video. If you enjoyed it, I would love to hear from you. Please like or subscribe to the channel to hear more, to get notified of more content. And if you want to work more deeply together on this stuff, I do have a one-on-one mentoring program, and you can hit me up for details on email, or pop a comment down below. So I hope you are finding ease and grace and happiness in your life. Thank you.